Good morning, friends, though. I don't know what's good about it. I'm low score. He's worst record. This is the Massillon Football League. Good morning, I guess, Dan. How are you?
Hockey season, man. I'm great.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have things to distract yourself. At least my, what is it? What are we in now? 2031. My 2031 Michigan Wolverines are undefeated for one more week until I have to face you and just take those 3 losses this season. Just the way it goes sometimes, I guess. It's terrible. But fantasy, Dan, it's been an interesting season. I don't know that you and I have ever been this unsuccessful in the same season, and I just don't know that it's going to get any better.
I haven't been this unsuccessful since year 1.
Year 2 for me but that ended up being an actual tank year. But I also kept the Minnesota Vikings defense that year, so that was a complete mess. But yeah, fantasy football, it's been a weird one. I'll draw attention to my username. My goodness, I hope these German doctors can do something for Christian McCaffrey. I saw conflicting reports this week. One doctor who did not examine McCaffrey but is familiar with the injury says there's no chance he's playing in October. But then Shanahan is like, we're going to ramp him up. We know we can have him back in 2 weeks. That's our goal. And so I'm hoping for Kyle Shanahan to be the right one here. Dan, let's talk about week 3 a little bit. I don't know why, but let's go ahead and talk about week 3 for a little bit. So I have the records up on the screen for the 3 things we learned. I'll get us started, Dan. The first one, I've been kind of formulaic with this. I like to call out the high scores. So Terry with his second high score of the season, taking on the worst score of the season, me. And more importantly, could have been far worse because he picked up my scraps of Jawan Jennings, but did not start him. Josh Allen and Jawan Jennings came close to beating my team on their own, Dan.
Yeah, this is the highlight for me of the week is watching you score 48 points. Have you taken the time to go see if that was the lowest score ever?
I did. It's not remotely close to the lowest score
I
ever.
believe Kenny or JR have the lowest score ever.
So,
like 41 or 42 maybe.
Believe it or not, that's actually step 2 of 3 things we learned this week. So I'll save that for a second.
Okay.
But I did want to point out in the things I learned is you guys need to pay attention to who I cut for kickers and defense because they're about to pop off. I have now cut Rashid Shaheed. Now, obviously, his week 3 was fucking terrible. But his week 2, when I cut him, was great. And now Jawan Jennings, who, again, popped off in week 3 after I cut him. So pay attention to who I cut this week for that kicker and defense. They're fucking gold. And let's never forget, I cut Puka Nacua for a kicker and a defense. Dan, what do you got?
Greg can't be stopped.
Yeah, it's on that same extent. Do we got to give Kenny some credit? 2-1 on a team that we thought was going to be trash, but I'll let you talk about Greg.
I mean, Greg's just everything just keeps falling his way, man. I'm telling you, it's his year. I said on the show last week, I didn't have a good reason why, but I just felt like he was going to win.
Now, 2 years ago, we joked that it wasn't Horvath's year. Everything went the other way. Wasn't there someone last year where things kept falling their way? Was it Horvath? I think it was Horvath last year.
It was Horvath. It went from him having absolutely no luck to him having all the luck, and that's somehow transferred to Greg. I don't know what they did together, but
yeah, working some witchcraft. By the way, Horvath, you are my open trade offer right now. I'm not trading Jonathan Brooks. I didn't hold this guy for 4 weeks just to give him fuck away. The whole point here is he's going to save my team. Stop sending me offers for him.
Listen, nobody is saving your team. Let's be clear.
Jonathan Brooks is going to save my team. The new Bijan Robinson, but better. Hey Dan, how bad is 48.87? 2 fucking negatives. Let's talk about that. So all I did was go back on what we saw on Sleeper, and it is the 5th worst score that we've seen in our time on Sleeper. I did not count the parts where people did not start a full lineup. So in our time on Sleeper, there has been 1 toe-to-toe. It was Brian and Steve Horvath. That obviously didn't count. And tanking Kenny that caused the lottery rules 2 points. I beat him twice in the season where he was tanking, but one of those weeks he didn't start a quarterback or a running back, and the other week he didn't start a defense, I think. So I didn't count those. So 48.7. Back in 2021, Mott's dropped a 46.93. Also in 21, Stevie dropped a 44.2. Back in 22, Brian dropped a 47.7. No exaggeration that he quit that season. But the worst score in our time on Sleeper how quickly we forget Eric, who, welcome to the league, dropped a 42.08 in 2023. So 44.87 is not the worst score in our league's history, and it's certainly not since we've been here on Sleeper.
Well, that's disappointing.
I was going to go back to Yahoo if I had to, because I still have access to that whole history because I'm in a league on Yahoo this year. But thankfully I did not have to. So what an ugly week.
I feel like there were a couple of 30s on Yahoo.
Yeah, I feel like there probably were. So yeah, those are probably not the thing is those Sleepers, the more accurate history, because we also changed the defensive scoring since we've been over here on Sleeper. So, and Darren does bring up Eric got handed a shit team. So Eric took Xavier's team. Xavier's team wasn't shit.
He just turned it into it.
Yeah, he had no draft picks was his issue. Xavier and Brian traded their draft picks. Xavier had a team. Brian had no team and no draft picks. So that one was ugly. And then Dan, the one I brought up for NFL purposes, rookie wide receivers are looking fucking legit. So shout out to Rob P, who was all in on them in the draft. Just in week 3, Malik Neighbors, 24 fantasy points, Rome Odunze, 21 fantasy points, and Marvin Harrison, 14 fantasy points. And obviously, after what he just did last Thursday night, Malik Neighbors is like the number 1 wide receiver in our fantasy league right now.
What's funny is you asked me in the preseason show, would it be possible for there to be 2 stud wide receivers as rookies this year? Asking about Neighbors.
I remember that because everybody said Neighbors belonged on the same level as Marvin Harrison, and I don't know enough about college football to know if he belonged there. He very clearly fucking belongs there.
Yeah, Rob had offered me a trade to get Neighbors in the preseason, and I turned it down. It was a lot. He wanted a lot. It was the first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a player.
I guess he and Taylor were chatting at the draft, and there was some comment made about like, get Kyler Murray and you can get Malik Neighbors. I think it was Neighbors. And then Taylor got Kyler Murray, tried to get Neighbors, couldn't get the trade done. And after Neighbors popped in week 3, Taylor sent me a text. He's like, I'm never going to get Malik Neighbors now.
Nope.
And then after continuing to pop in week 4, I think that's on par. I will say Rome Odunze, even with Chicago not looking great, we started to see glimpses of good Caleb Williams in the 4th quarter last week. Rome Odunze goes over 100 yards and finds the end zone as well. We could have 3 good rookies and maybe even 4 if Brian Thomas, if the Jacksonville could get themselves together. He looked good for a week.
I don't believe that Caleb Williams will be good enough to keep Odunze scoring high. You know, I've been poo-pooing Williams since he was in college. I'm not a Williams fan.
I
don't
am.
think he's the dude.
And I think you're going to be eating your words after this week. I'm a big Caleb Williams fan this week. He's not going to be my pick for the game.
I feel so much more confident that he's going to do terrible this week now that you said he's going to do good. Because I've noticed on this show, everybody you get on has an awful week.
He's my stream of the week at quarterback for my club fantasy article this week.
That means less than 10 points. Awesome.
Fewer than 10 points. At least use proper grammar if you're going to give me shit, Dan. Any more lessons learned from last week, Dan? Oh, yeah, I did forget to bring up when we were talking to the rookies. Xavier Worthy obviously had that big pop week in week 1 as well.
Yeah, but he's done nothing since then.
Yeah.
He's worthless. I think the Bengals, Cam Taylor-Britt said it best. He runs really fast, and other than that, he's not much. No, that's about it. I think Kenny winning was a surprise. I didn't see that one coming. Eric only getting 90. I expected more out of his team, but
the scores in general, if I can pop week 3 up here real quick, the scores in general last week were not great, though. Yeah. Obviously, Terry had the high at 122, which is not a very high for us. Darren only scored 64. Taylor and JR, that's a normal matchup. Like you said, Eric only hits 90. Phil only hits 72. Mott's won with 91 points. And then another, you scored 91. So, yeah, just not our normal week where we're seeing multiple scores in the 120s.
My question, will anybody beat Rob this year?
Rob Mott's?
No. Rob Mott's already has a loss.
I didn't even realize Rob P was undefeated. Darren's calling it this week. Yes. Okay, so our undefeateds are our new people, Greg and Rob P. I don't think it happens this week. Darren is calling it this week. And just for a quick scroll of the records, we have 2 undefeated teams, lots of 2-1s and 1-2s, and 2 winless teams. That's JR and Metzger, which I certainly would not have expected in the way things are shaking out. Dan, we did have some trades this week. So I'm going to list the 4 trades. You talk about what you want to talk about. I got the party started. I gave up on Patrick Mahomes. I traded Patrick Mahomes, Christian Kirk, an 8 and a 9 for Geno Smith, Kansas City, a 1 and a 3. Darren wasn't done. After acquiring Patrick Mahomes, he trades Tyreek Hill to Horvath for Xavier Worthy, a 2 and a 5. Eric and Greg got in on the action. Greg is in trouble at running back. He needed to acquire working legs. He gets Najee Harris for David Njoku and a 2. And then he acquired Emmanuel Wilson, who I had just picked up off of waivers, for a 4. So I gave him Emmanuel Wilson. He gave me a 4. He bought 2 running backs in the week. I'll talk about Mahomes, or you can talk about it first. I figure that's the one we're probably going to talk about.
Actually, that's not the one I want to talk about.
Okay,
I understand that trade makes perfect sense.
I was going to say, I feel like my guy is average. Darren thinks he's a little bit above average. I got a 1. Technically, Geno Smith, I think, is ranked 1 spot ahead of him in the rankings right now. I got the better player and the better pick.
We can talk about it, but here's the thing. You got a 1 for him from a team who is going to be in the lottery. With your 2, you could have 2 lottery picks this year, so that's good news for you.
I was upset when I was updating the league record book. I forgot this was the year I was going to take you for consecutive playoff streaks, and my team falls apart. So we're going to remain tied for consecutive playoffs.
Taylor's going to pass that up here pretty quick. So it doesn't matter.
Taylor's 1 and 2 as well. It's not.
Yeah, but he actually has a good team. He's a 1 and 2 with a good team, not 1 and 2 with a bad team.
That's fair.
So to combine Holmes and Hill on a team could make Darren better, but then he trades away Hill for Worthy. And I just don't understand if it's just a love for Worthy, because to only get a 2 and a 5 back, like if you would have put Hill out there in the trade block, you probably would have got better offers than that. I would have offered you better than a 2 and a 5.
He did put Hill on the trade block, but
as Taylor, I didn't see it then.
Taylor pointed out in the chat, he moved too quickly, because I don't know if Taylor was going to try to package something together, but Taylor said Darren moved too quickly on that trade, and obviously you agree.
No, yeah, absolutely. Could have got so much more. I mean, Horvath set up to have the best receivers in the history of this league.
I think you're giving Tyreek Hill a little bit too much credit for this season with that just lack of quarterback play there, and we don't know when Tua Tagovailoa is coming back. So I get what Darren did. Could he have gotten better than a 2? Almost certainly. If he's big on Worthy, which he clearly is, I don't know that it changed Horvath much for me, just because Tyreek Hill the Dolphins are mid right now, plain and simple.
He'll get his. Hill will get his. He'll be fine.
He hasn't gotten it in 2 weeks, so
it's only been 1 week.
Well, he got fewer than 4 points with Tua Tagovailoa the week he got hurt.
That's mid-game. I can't stress about that. It'll be fine.
I'm just saying, he hasn't gotten it in 2 weeks. But no, I agree. I feel like he did maybe move off of that a little bit quicker than he needed to. But if he's a big Xavier Worthy guy, and now he's stacking, he has the Kansas City stack. Trust me, it doesn't work. Sorry about your luck. All right, looking at week 4. Back in week 3, Darren and I had the exact same picks. That was good for 5 and 2. Dan, you had a couple of disagreements with us. It got you 4 and 3 on the season. Darren and I remain tied, 14 and 7. Dan, you were looking at 12 and 9. I actually think that Sleeper did a very good job this week of ranking the games. I know it's just completely random, so we're just going to take them in the order that they appear on my screen, Dan. It starts off, interestingly, Weiss versus Weiss. We have Weiss versus Weiss and Rob versus Rob this week. So Weiss versus Weiss, me versus Stevie. What do you got going down here, Dan?
A big win for Stevie.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big win. And me and Darren both put that it's going to be close, but
not going to be close. Not going to be close.
I think I need Travis Kelce to play very well this week, which probably isn't going to happen. Obviously, Stevie smashes at running back. But I think the big week from Rondale Robinson, I think Pickens can match. I think Calvin Ridley over now Braylon Allen is probably a win for me. I'm going to obviously get a kicker and a defense. And then if Will Levis continues to play like Will Levis, he does destroy my advantage at defense, because Will Levis has not seen an interception he can't throw yet. But I think Geno Smith is actually possibly in a better situation than Baker Mayfield this week. Derek Carr was trash against Philadelphia last week. Philadelphia is going to run the ball, keep the game low scoring. I think Geno Smith might be in the second or maybe even first high scoring game of the week. I'm hoping for a big Geno Smith week to keep me in this is his first week as my quarterback. I don't think it's a blowout.
Can we talk about Travis Kelce for a minute? Because
sure.
last week we were comparing Cole Kmet and Travis Kelce. And then Cole Kmet went out and scored more points.
I do just want to point out that everything Cole Kmet did was in the fourth quarter, and I still hate him for it. But yes, Travis Kelce, the tight end 22 in our fantasy league, whose highest output on the season is a whopping 5.5 fantasy points.
Kmet has more than Travis Kelce has this entire season. And I think that he's still going to have more after this week. He had more last week.
Look, my guy's living his best life. I'm not going to give him away for peanuts. I'm going to fully Matt Herzog this bitch, and I'm just going to not trade him away and be super mad about his non-performance. Darren and I agree with you, by the way, that Stevie wins this. We both just said it was going to be a closer matchup. We don't have it as a blowout. Moving on. We have Darren versus Terry. By the way, on my matchup, we both had Thursday night players, Wan'Dale Robinson with the 14 points and Brandon Aubrey, the kicker god, with 11 points. Terry had the Dallas defense. They were pretty average, 6 points. I have Terry winning this one in a blowout. I think he has every position as a win and most of them as a pretty big win. So the mediocre output from the Dallas team shouldn't matter. Darren had this one, but he has it as a close win for Terry. So we're in disagreement there. Now that I'm looking, Darren, you'll be unhappy to know we agree on everything except for one pick this week. What do you got on this one, Dan?
I'm going with Terry, but I agree with Darren. I think it's going to be a closer game than what you're envisioning.
That's because you guys are putting way too much faith in Patrick Mahomes.
It's not. Actually,
I know.
I don't think Josh Allen is going to go completely nuts like he did last week.
Okay.
I think Baltimore's defense is better than that. Madison against Cleveland's defense isn't a great matchup. I know Williams has had some good games, but I just not a true believer in his consistency at a receiver there.
Yeah.
What was it? Three targets last week. Yeah, I'm going with Terry, but close.
Okay. Moving on, we have JR and Greg. JR got a bad performance out of Micah Parsons on Thursday night, just 4 fantasy points. This is Jared Goff versus Brock Purdy as the quarterback matchup. I'll let you get us started here, Dan.
I'm going Greg. Greg's going to keep this winning streak alive. I mean, you have two guys just going in polar opposite directions. So,
yeah, it's been a rough season for JR. As I mentioned, I obviously enjoy the Seattle-Detroit matchup this week. So I have slight edge to Goff at the quarterback matchup, but I actually think it's JR's New York Jets. I'm going to disagree with you and pick JR this week. When you look at the player-to-player comparison, I think Breece Hall gives a slight edge over David Montgomery, and I love David Montgomery. I think Garrett Wilson gives a decent edge, even going up against Patrick Surtain, over Jerry Jeudy. And then the Jets defense taking on Denver versus New Orleans, taking on Atlanta. I just prefer his 3 New York Jets in those matchups, and those were the deciding factor for me there. I think JR gets off the schneid and gets to his 1 win this season, even with the poor performance out of Micah Parsons. Darren agrees with me. It is a JR win for Darren there as well.
Before you move on there,
yeah,
because I feel like Jared Goff is the Travis Kelce of quarterbacks for you.
I don't disagree with you.
Don't click. Oh, never mind.
I didn't look at anything. I just put his picture up on the screen.
What is Jared Goff's best QB performance this season so far?
Oh, I looked at this because I was Darren and JR were both competing for Patrick Mahomes. I think he scored like 9 fantasy points in our scoring.
He scored a whopping 13 last week, but
yeah.
QB 18 is his best finish on the season. So I think this whole assuming Jared Goff is just going to be great thing needs to be looked at. I think that
that's fair. If it were in Seattle, I'd be more worried. I say if it was in Seattle, I'd be more worried about it. But with this one being a home game, no, I knew Goff has not been good. Goff is in most of my leagues. Goff is a reason where I waited late on quarterback that I'm doing terribly. So
Jared Goff's 2 home games so far this year, he's a total of 10 points.
I know.
Okay.
What'd you say about Tyreek Hill? It was an early game. I'm not worried about it.
There you go.
Everything will be fine. So
there you go.
All right. You got Taylor, who picked up his first win last week. taking on Phil. Both had Monday night matchups. Dak Prescott did, I would say, what he was supposed to do, 16 points against the Giants. Jake Ferguson, again, did what he was supposed to do, 9 points against the Giants. So they both kind of got the performance they were expected to get. Dan, I have Taylor winning this one. I think it's running backs and the flex that make up for the deficiencies at wide receiver. I wish Kamara didn't have that questionable tag, but even still, Kyron Williams is one of my favorite running backs this week. I think Phil probably wins wide receiver, but then again, have we seen good Brandon Ayuk yet? But even still, then you have Bijan versus Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston's probably going to have Taylor Heineke as his quarterback. Long story short, I like Taylor just about everywhere. And this kid, Jaden Daniels, he almost made my three things. But Jaden Daniels, my goodness, this kid looks legit as a fantasy quarterback at the very least, Dan.
I agree. Taylor's going to get this one. I think this will be a blowout. Things are turning south quickly for Phil. Do you see the thing where Brandon Ayuk got into a huge argument with Shanahan at practice? Yeah, he threw and this was the quote from a reporter, a temper tantrum because Shanahan wanted him to wear a different color of shorts.
What?
He came out in different shorts than the rest of the team, different color shorts for their practice. Shanahan told him to go change into the same color as the rest of the offense. And Ayuk threw a huge temper tantrum, like screaming, yelling, crying. Not really crying, but screaming and yelling. And
no, I missed this completely.
Yeah.
So you get paid and you're still acting like an asshole?
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah. not good at all. You have to be questioning where you just put that $120 million.
So let's go back though. Again, don't watch college football. Everything. So everyone wanted to bitch about Jaden Daniels' slightness, how thin he was. But the one thing about Jaden Daniels over a comparison to Anthony Richardson is Jaden Daniels proved he could throw the ball in college. And I feel like we're starting to see that early on already in the NFL.
Yeah. Jaden Daniels has looked good. I'm not convinced that at this point through 3 games that he is going to be a great NFL player for a long period of time. He's looking great for fantasy. He's looking like the real deal, but I need more than 3 games to be consistent. I would say the most impressive thing to me is he has not thrown an interception yet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's only thrown 2 passing touchdowns. Now, granted, those 2 came this week on Monday night, and they looked like great throws.
Yeah.
Maybe Washington's trying to protect him a bit. I understand that. We'll see as the season goes, but he has looked great so far. I'm just not convinced he's going to be. Think back to Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston's rookie seasons. Everybody thought they were going to be outstanding because of how they started, and neither one got a second starting contract. So
I like the kid. I think he's going to be great for fantasy, but I agree. I agree. You never know what they're going to be for the NFL. Phil is taking the L, but says it's going to be close, Dan. Give him some credit on the blowout. So he said Hey,
Phil, I was on you at the beginning of the season. I said I thought you had a good team. I think I might even had you like on the borderline playoffs or maybe even in the playoffs. I can't remember now because my team sucks and I just don't care. But my favorite player on your team, Phil, I love that you got Zach Bond. Did you have him last week? Because he's been playing great this season.
I think he picked him up this year or this week after. Yeah, he's had 2 good games. I was going back to see if I could find your playoff teams in my notes, but I unbolded the ones that we had in common. So I do not know if you had Phil in the playoffs.
Either way, I said I like this team being of the year. It's just not going his way. Diggs has not been consistently good. Running backs have been a mess. Prescott's been inconsistent. You have Ayuk holding out, throwing temper tantrums. Just hasn't worked out, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, the Ayuk thing has just been super disappointing this season. We're moving on to Horvath and Eric. I'll let you get us started with this one, Dan. I'll point out that Eric got just 3 points out of Devin Singletary. Large disappointment from Devin Singletary. And CeeDee Lamb did CeeDee Lamb things, 18.4 points on Thursday night.
I am going with Steve. I think Steve gets a win. It's not going to be a blow. I think it's going to be close. I don't love Deshaun Watson starting. I think they've already ruled both the starting tackles out for the game.
Yeah.
Browns have not looked good. I kind of expect them to go into Vegas and lose. So, but I still think he can get the win there. I think Horvath needs to add a quarterback.
I want to give Horvath credit on proving me wrong on the running backs because obviously he hit a home run with Jordan Mason. I think Bucky Irving is likely to start seeing more work. Horvath has dug himself out of a running back hole, but Darren and I both put Deshaun Watson in our notes. And I think the Jalen Hurts Deshaun Watson is enough to swing this matchup Eric's way. There's no way I'm starting and trusting Deshaun Watson. I don't care what defense it is. And I think the Raiders are, I think we're going to learn a lot about the Raiders this week. Last week, Antonio Pierce lost control of his team and they lost a game they should not have lost. If they don't come out, I'm going to lose a lot of respect for Antonio Pierce, plain and simple. And I know he's super worried about my respect. I'm going to lose a lot of respect for Antonio Pierce if they don't come out and play fantastic this week, because that tells me there's some questions about his ability as an NFL coach. I want to believe that he's good, and I think Deshaun Watson is going to suffer for it this week. Darren and I both agree it's an Eric win because of Deshaun Watson. Dan, so you hit the nail on the head. You just think Horvath's going to be able to pull it out. Obviously, with the receivers that Horvath has, Jefferson, Lamb, Hill, we've never seen someone have the top 3 drafted receivers on one team in our league before. So
I don't know. Brian might have had one back in the day when he was keeping 3 wide receivers every year.
That's true. Well, and then there was the time where he was keeping 2 running backs, and I think he might have had the 2 drafted running backs too. Brian always pulled off some crazy shit. All right, let's move on that one. So we have Kenny versus you, 2-1 versus 0-3. If you had told me that was going to be the record in this matchup at the beginning of the season, Dan, I would have agreed with you, but I would have thought it would have been flipped the other way. It's been a rough season. I'll get it started. I prefer Burrow. I think your running backs cancel, and I think Kenny's wide receivers make the difference here, Dan. I'm picking you to go 0-4 because I think Sam Darnold can keep pace with Burrow. But when I look at Jamar Chase, Drake London, DeAndre Hopkins versus Brian Thomas, Michael Pittman, Allen Lazard, that's enough for me in the matchup, especially with Dallas Goedert essentially going to be the wide receiver 1 for Philadelphia this week against a bad Tampa Bay defense. I think Kenny takes it to 3 wins and you take it to 4 losses.
I agree completely. I think Kenny gets the win.
Darren called it a blowout, by the way. I did not agree with that, but
it very well could be. I mean, I'm not going to score 48. Like, who does that? But
fair.
I think Kenny's in a better spot than I am this week. I think he gets the win. It might be his last win of the season, but he'll at least get to 3-1.
There you go. He needs to get to, you want to get to 4 wins. Remember, I round down on lottery points. So your goal should be to get to 4 wins. You guys were one of the few games that had nobody going on Thursday night.
I'm just hoping to get to 1 win this season.
It's been a rough one, Dan. It's
JR. I need to get to that JR matchup.
Yeah, I was going to say, the real question is, Phil said we all win when Dan goes 0-4.
Wow, I was being nice to you, Phil. Man.
And what I have marked as our game of the week, Dan, Rob versus Rob. I think it's pretty easily the best matchup, I think, in our league. Probably the best matchup we'll see for the season.
This is a championship preview. Championship preview right here.
For those who aren't paying attention, listen to the matchups in this matchup. Lamar Jackson versus CJ Stroud. Jahmyr Gibbs versus Travis Etienne. Brian Robinson, if you don't know how good he is, go look up his numbers, versus James Conner, similar situation. The aforementioned Malik Neighbors taking on Nico Collins. Don't sleep on Nico Collins. Marvin Harrison Jr. on DK Metcalf. Mark Andrews versus Mike Gesicki. Everything has to have something ugly in it, though I actually like Gesicki this week. Rome Odunze versus Aaron Jones. Nick Bosa versus TJ Watt. Kickers. The San Francisco defense taking on the Pittsburgh defense. Dan, I don't know that we've ever had one like this where they basically cancel at every position and they're fucking great at every position.
Yeah, this will be a fun game to watch. I'm taking Rob P to get the win. I don't know that Rob P's going to lose a game this entire season. His team is in great shape. He did a great job.
He did. It's funny. For years, Stevie, Kenny, and JR have went all in on rookies, and it hasn't worked out for them. Rob P does it, and it's just fucking smashing. So
I think the difference is Rob P picked good ones. Whereas those guys just picking Ohio State players doesn't always work out.
Yeah, this has worked out real well. I also have Rob P winning. This is the one where Darren and I went against each other. Darren actually has Mott's winning this matchup, but I'm not going to give him a hard time on it. Who fuck knows what's going to happen? But another great week out of Malik Neighbors. What a matchup. I hope this comes down to like one fantasy point, Dan. I just think, my goodness, this is exactly what you want to see in fantasy football. I wish I could be a part of a matchup like this. Hopefully there's someone out there whose team is only going to be able to score 50 points so they and I can have a 1-point matchup this season.
Well, they'll have Metcalf and Gibbs going against each other on Monday Night Football, so maybe that'll determine the win.
Better. Oh my God! Well,
it's too bad that your old butt's gonna be asleep and won't be able to stay up and watch.
That's right. It's gonna be the best first quarter of my life, and then I am going to fucking bed, and I'll figure out who won the next day because I am old as shit, people. Guys, that is the show. Except we still need to play the game. So Dan, last week, close, but not as close as it was the week before. Let me remind everybody who they picked. So we had 4 participants last week. I had Kyler and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dan had Burrow and Alvin Kamara. Horvath had Dak and CD with the Cowboys stack. Darren got weird with Saquon Barkley and Derek Carr. Getting weird did not work for Darren, though he did finish in second place. Dan, you took the win with 39 fantasy points on the back of your boy Joe Burrow balling out on Monday night because Alvin Kamara let you down there. So you take the dub. I have my picks. I have Darren's picks. Darren actually brings up something interesting. If we want to add it this week, we can add it. It would be putting us on the spot. Darren tried to pick a defense for his flex, which I'm not going to let him do. Do we want to add a defense?
We've done that in the past. We've done that in the past.
Oh, have we? Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So do we want to add a defense to this, expand the fantasy knowledge to talk about it a little bit, and go 3 picks?
Here's the thing. You're the one who has to keep track of all this, so you decide if you want to keep track of a defense as well.
I don't. So we're going to just change Darren's pick to the Vikings because apparently we've allowed it in the past.
We have. I picked the Cowboys defense when they were going nuts last year.
Okay. Well, then Darren's picks are Sam Darnold and the Vikings. He went with a Viking stack. His backup pick was Rashee Rice. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for him. Dan, I know you're going to make me go first, I assume.
Yes, sir.
So I love CJ Stroud this week. I think that's going to be one of the best matchups of the week. I have CJ Stroud, and I think Jamar Chase is not done making the NFL pay. As he's getting back into shape, I think the Carolina Panthers are ass, and I think Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in fantasy this week.
I'm going to keep the Burrow train going, go with him, and I'm going to take Saquon.
Somehow I knew you were going to go with Saquon, and so I almost took Burrow, and I was like, do I want the stack? But I just love CJ Stroud. I didn't want to stack him with one of his wide receivers because I think both of his wide receivers eat this week. Part of me wanted to go Caleb and Adunze just to really be an asshole about it. But
you wanted to finish in last. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. With Keenan Allen back, I'm not as sold on Adunze as I was when the week started.
I hope Keenan Allen's back. I hope he's back.
They're saying he's back. I thought it was anyway.
I don't believe it with my team until it happens.
Phil, if you're still in the chat, tell me who you think is going to be the best quarterback and the best flex before we get out of here. So just a reminder to everybody, if you text me, put it in the league chat. We'll keep track. We'll announce the winner.
I can tell you Phil's picks already. It's going to be Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. Because that dude just wants the Browns.
So I have CJ Stroud and Jamar Chase, best quarterback, best wide receiver. Dan has Joe Burrow, Saquon Barkley, best quarterback, best running back. And then Darren going crazy, Sam Darnold and the Vikings defense.
That isn't going crazy. Sam Darnold has been fire.
Oh, I agree. Just with the defense. We got Derrick Henry and Jaden Daniels for Horvath. Oh, we got Nate back with us. Josh Allen and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Welcome back, Nate. And then did I miss anybody else? I'm on different screens here. No. Phil didn't give us anything. So, Dan, our first time with 5 participants and maybe even 6 if Phil gets something in here quick enough. But, guys, that is going to be the show. You guys have a wonderful Saturday. Dan, any parting words for our friends?
I love you guys. Play your college football games.
Try
and get this national championship one here pretty soon, especially since all you guys lost this week and are probably going to be missing the playoffs now. Congratulations.
Did they lose this week?
A lot of people lost this week.
I haven't looked yet. I'll have to play later on today. I have more shit I got to do.
Well, I guess the week that we just transitioned into
yeah. I don't ever pay attention. I pay attention to my team and my recruiting. So
I'll here sneak preview. Horvath dropped 88 points this week.
Jesus fucking Christ. Horvath has certainly found a way to
he threw for like 800 yards. His number one receiver had 500 yards, 11 passing touchdowns. So, yeah. He didn't run the ball once the entire game.
That's
not one rushing attempt.
This kid didn't run the ball on me for like 8 minutes, but that's not what this show is about. I hope everyone has a great week except for Stevie.
It might as well be about something important.
I hope your team crashes and burns. I was happy to hear that Stevie did want Tyler Conklin, so my hiding tight ends from him did work. I'll be dropping those guys at 4:00 today since Trey McBride is out, and more than likely it'll work out the wrong way, and the guy who Stevie got instead, Noah Fan or whatever, is going to be the one who outscores me. Anyway, have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Good luck, except Stevie.